Women in tech. Why do I want to talk about women in tech? Because, well, I'm sort of a woman in tech. We'll get more into my background, but now I work as a digital and social strategy consultant. So it's periphery of tech, right? So I want to answer the question: do we need more women in tech? And I'm going to try to do this in as much of a storytelling way as possible. So currently, and you can follow me on Twitter if you want, or at least tweet about me while I'm speaking if you want. My Twitter name is @LynneLoveHer. I used to be a rapper, so that's where that comes from. And I work currently at Wagner Edstrom. It's an independent communications firm here in, we're actually located in Bellevue. So I work out of there. I work out of New York, actually. Okay. Can anyone tell me who this woman is? Okay, and she is CEO of Yahoo. And what did she do before that? Okay, so she worked on a lot of products and services at Google. We all know who Marissa Mayer is, right? What about this woman? Do we know who she is? Oh, Sheryl Sandberg. Okay, what does Sheryl Sandberg do? COO of Facebook, yes. Chief Operating Officer. The young kid needed to bring in, someone who was a little more grounded, a little more solid, and a real business person to help him set things up right. Her background was also at Google. She created a lot of the sales products that they had there, right? The thing about these two women is, most all of you raise your hand. Most all of you were familiar with who they are. So they're not just women in tech. They have sort of reached almost a pop cultural status, right? Especially Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg's on TV all the time. She just wrote the book Lean In, started the Lean In movement. And it's been really great to hear these stories of Sheryl Sandberg's background and how she thinks women should lean in, and to hear about Marissa Mayer at Yahoo. And there was controversy, which kind of propelled her leadership. There was controversy around her making a decision for all of the folks who were working at home to come into the office, right? And that sort of made us take a little more notice of who she was and what she's doing at the helm of Yahoo. So for people who didn't know her before at Google, that news really brought her to the attention of most. The thing is, these two women don't account for most of the story. If you look at them, you would think there's great success of women in technology. You would think women rise to executive levels in technology very easily. You would think there are just so many women in tech. Sandberg is on the business side, so she comes more from a business side, but Mayer was actually a coder. She was a programmer. She's an engineer. So she's a real diehard tech. And like I said, they don't represent the true story. As you can see here, does this have a, oh, whatever. Okay, I wanted to see if it had one of those little things. They're not the entire story. 56% of women in technology companies leave their organizations at mid-level. And what this means is a lot of women, when they get to about the, 10 to 20 year mark, end up leaving. They don't stay. They don't do what these other two women have done. The pressure becomes too much for them. It just gets too hard. They're playing in an all-boys world, and sometimes they're not being heard, right? So this is the reality. Although those two women have been successful, this is actually the reality. So why it's important to me and why I even want to talk about it, because I'm part of some of that reality where my tech story is really not successful, although I landed into a different role. I started out as a hardcore programmer. I grew up as a kid in the Bronx, New York, which is actually probably one of the poorest cities in America, right? And so, and I'm an African-American woman, if you haven't noticed. So not many people would expect that an African-American in a poor city would be coding, right? But there I was. It was my interest since an early child You know, while my friends were playing with dolls, I was playing with these little Radio Shack transistor shortwave kits where you could make FM radios and AM radios and so on. You know those? Yeah. And I'm dating myself with that because I don't know if Radio Shack makes those kind of things anymore. So, you know, I went to high school and I got like a 95 on my algebra regents. So I ended up majoring in math. Again, not a lot of people in the Bronx were doing that, right? And then went on to learn data processing, which, you know, is these really big machines with these punch cards, and you put in all these ones and zeros to end up running reports, right? And then also learned BASIC on a Commodore 64. We all remember that machine. There was like the Tandy and the Atari something, and then the Commodore 64. And then we had in our college office, we had one of the first Apple Macintosh computers, and I was the first kid at the school who could figure out how to run it. No one else knew how to run it, so that was pretty cool. So this was an interest of mine, and it was really great, but I didn't know anyone like me. I didn't have any role models. Yet, I still went on to college and decided to study information systems. I had no clue what this was. My mother was like, what is this? What is this computer thing you're talking about, you're doing? Information systems? I didn't even know what kind of career I could get with this kind of major. I just knew I had an interest in computers. And so I went and studied information systems. I learned a bunch of programming languages, Fortran, COBOL, Pascal. Before Excel, there was something called Lotus 123. Not Lotus Notes, but Lotus 123 was a spreadsheet. Learned how to program functions and keys in that. You know, and just was really having fun in technology. And even landed a position for a little while with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where I used to, for the engineers, I used to run these reports. There was this little machine, not little. It was probably like this size. It was called an IBM Systems 36. And I used to run these reports for these guys. And I used to have to run them overnight because it would be like reams and reams of paper. The report would be like this high. And the papers were like as wide as the, whoops, I'm out of the zone, as wide as this podium here. So basically, I was just really excited, really enthused about being in technology. But again, even in college, most of the people around me were guys. I didn't really have any female friends who were doing what I was doing. And so I didn't feel a support system, and I didn't have role models, and I didn't know who to talk to. Even most of the professors were men, right? So on the side, I also wrote a bit, did a little bit of journalism, and I had this roommate who called herself a witch, and she saw into the future and said that I would be a writer. I took her word, ended up switching my major, and sounds crazy, because I was so happy about this technology thing. But the point I'm trying to make is, you know, I had no role models. I had no support system. It was a boys' world, right? And this is the way a lot of women feel in tech, especially young girls. Yeah, then I quit. Where were the Marissa Mayers and Sheryl Sandbergs when I was a kid? Where were these women? You know, we didn't have social media where you could learn these stories really quickly about these people, where you could find all this information that you wanted to find. You know, I had to rely on books or what professors told me. I didn't have access. And, you know, it was unfortunate in a sense. Teen girls Part of the problem is a lot of teen girls don't go into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, right? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of times people are telling girls, you're good at writing, or you're good at arts, or you're good at, they're not telling girls, try math, try computers. And beyond that, boys are getting on the computers and gaming and whatever much earlier than girls are, getting interested. Girls are getting interested now more and more for social networking, right? But actually being creators of something, few and in between. I mean, there's been a couple of girls. I remember a few years ago, there was a teen girl who started a business. She actually was making a lot of money. She used to design MySpace pages. Remember when MySpace was popular? And this was a teen who was making hundreds and thousands of dollars just by designing MySpace templates. You know, but you don't find that often. Also, girls still have a perceived gender barrier. They still feel that there are certain careers that are slated for men, that girls will not be accepted into those careers. And this rate of this belief is even higher for African American and Hispanic girls than it is for other women. So what I think that we need to tell more stories. We need to make more stories, and I'll talk about some other solutions later, but I think we need to tell more stories about more women in tech, about different types of women in tech, about other types of tech careers, you know, like a career like mine, digital and social strategist. I'm not actually coding, but I am working with technology. I'm helping people create digital and social strategies to further their business needs, right? Or, you know, even someone who is a COO of a tech company or a chief marketing officer of a tech company, there's still a woman in tech, and we need to tell more of those stories. And when I was at Fast Company, that's exactly what we did. Back in 2009, we had this expert blogger she has this organization called Women Who Tech, and she wrote a blog post describing or talking about where are the women in tech. And she named some of the women and put in their photos, and the article became very big on Dig. Do we remember Dig? I mean, it's kind of sort of back, but not the same. Back then, it was a lot of these, like, scary tech boys who, and I say scary because sometimes they could be really mean in the comments. And so what happened, this woman, Allison, had written this post, and then they posted it on Dig, and it became very popular really quickly because some of the comments were things like, oh, number 2 and number 3, I'd bang her, but number 5 is ugly as a dog, and things like that. Or they would say, why are we just focusing on women, you know, and this is divisive. And actually, no, women need to have a story because men always have a story in technology, right? So these comments just were getting more and more crazy and more out of control. And so the editor of the magazine decided that it was an important enough issue that we needed to do a print article, right? So not just on the web, but a print article in the magazine as well. And, you know, Fast Company is a really respected business magazine. So we started in 2009, the most influential women in technology. And what we meant by influential was, as you can see, my name is there, Lynne D. Johnson, Ellen McGirt, and Cherise Smith. We 3 wrote the article. And we covered women from a historical perspective, not as far back as, like, probably as far back as women who were doing Web 1.0 type businesses. And we talked about women who were, you know, building businesses out of blogging, and women who were gamers, and women who were coders, and women who were running businesses. And, you know, we basically came up with a list and gave a little one-liner to each one. Not the way I would have done it, but on the web, we got to play that out a lot more. We got to let a lot of those women come in and share their own stories and their own voices, like Rashmi Sinha, who started SlideShare. Anyone ever use SlideShare? Yeah, so a woman started that company, right? So she wrote a blog post for us. And then women like Dana Boyd, who is a researcher who has written a lot about young kids and their use of social media, and then she was also a researcher at Microsoft. And you know, this became very popular, very much talked about. Again, we still got some of that backlash from some young guys, some young coding guys who, you know, said, these women don't code, they're not real engineers. But as I said, there are other ways to look at how a person is a contributor to technology space. So we did it in 2009, like I said. And one of the people we featured who I'd like to call out is Morgan Romine. And Morgan Romine, at the time, was the leader of the Frag Dolls. And the Frag Dolls are a group of women who are gamers, professional gamers. And currently, Morgan is studying PhD in anthropology, and then she's going to use that to study games and so on. But she's also an esports maven, kind of like an evangelist. So she's still involved in gaming. Then in 2011, we featured, because we did it again, oh, wrong year. Sorry, that one's supposed to be 2010. In 2010, we featured people like Amber Case, who's a cyborg anthropologist. And what that basically means is she's working on bringing together robotics and human interaction and trying to bridge the gap between humans and robots, which sounds pretty freakish, but it's great work that she's doing. And then in 2011, we featured people like this woman, Cher Wang, who's the CEO of HTC. She's one of the co-founders of HTC, actually. She's been working in technology since the 90s. So definitely, we need to hear more stories about more of these women. So why should you care? Why should any of us care about telling more stories about women? Or why should we care about women in technology? And do we really think that there should be more women in technology? Well, a lot of studies have been done that show when there are more ideas that come to the table, when there is more workplace diversity, then overall a company will build better products, right? And what some of those studies show is that to make things work, you have to have feminine qualities as well as masculine qualities come to the table, right? And the same has been said as far as higher profits. So this is from something that Women Who Tech, an organization I mentioned earlier, actually did in 2012. They looked at a couple of studies and they put together an infographic. And they talked about the return on an ROI, the return on investment of a business that invests in having women leaders in their company. Average return on equity increase, 53%. Return on sales, 42%. And return on invested capital increased by at least 66%. I mean, those are pretty good numbers, right? It shows a pretty good reason why we would want to have women as leaders in companies, and particularly tech companies. Women-led companies and the Springboard portfolio raised more than $5 billion in equity financing. So something that's happening a lot recently is women entrepreneurs are getting money faster. So that's something to think about. If any of you have a tech idea that you want to start, a tech company, there's money out there for you. also led to 10 IPOs. So as we know, Sheryl Sandberg led Facebook to its devastating IPO. You know, we expected a lot more from that IPO, but you know, she did a good job in bringing it to market, but it just didn't do as well because Facebook gets on all of our nerves all the time, right? And those companies are still in business and generating $4 billion in revenue. Also, when we talk about startups, a study was done that found that 61% of men believe that there should be more diversity. They believe that more diversity leads to more innovation and just, again, back to my point about better products, because there's more testing. Women will test more. Guys will kind of rush through it. Sorry, guys. Rush through it and get it done, right? Whereas a woman will want to test and reiterate a little more, right? Guys, we kind of have to lead you to that, let's do a do-over phase of things, right? So at the same time that 60% of men believe this, only 41% of this same group of guys want to encourage hiring practices that increase diversity. That doesn't correlate very well. And, you know, where the jobs are, if we want to know where the jobs are, there's a lot of engineering jobs out there. There are a lot of technology jobs that are being created. I don't have all the stats on it because there's so many varying reports, but I know even if you look on one job board recently, there were like 50,000 engineering jobs. These are recently posted jobs. So there are job spots. There are jobs out here waiting for people to fill them. And the thing is, we're not getting women there to fill some of these spots, right? And here's another thing from the Women Who Tech infographic that shows that if you reduce female attrition in the STEM by 25%, we would add 220,000 more people to the job pool. Like, there you go. Meanwhile, there are a lot of women out there graduating from college looking for jobs who can't find jobs, but had they studied engineering or computer science or math, they'd have a job. Interesting. So what does the future look like? And I talked about some women, because this talk was really supposed to originally be like influential women in tech, but I wanted to make sure I answered a question and made sure that I gave you some takeaways and better understand why it's even important to talk about influential women in tech. But when we look to the future of tech, we see women doing some great and creative things in technology, like Dr. Cynthia Brazil, who's also, this is another robotics woman. She's given TED Talks, so if you want to go on TED and listen to her, great talk. She's awesome. The work that she's doing at MIT is amazing. And she's someone to look to as the future of technology. As well, Jane McGonigal, who has been working in gaming for a really long time. She has a PhD. She does a lot of alternative reality gaming. She's written a book on how games can make us better and change the world. So it's not just, she's not just gaming for gaming's sake, it's gaming for the good of the world. And what that means is she, you know, games for like mental health issues, games for health issues, things like that. So games that do good, right? And then, because I talked about, you know, African Americans and Hispanics, I wanted to show these two young ladies who won an award for an Apple Store challenge, and they created this app about historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and they won this award, and one of them has gone on to work at Apple, actually, as a developer. So, you know, great success story there. So this is what the future of women in technology can look like if we just encourage more women to get involved, to let them know that their voices and their talents are wanted in this space. Here are some of the opportunities that exist out there to help young girls right now, as well as women, to help in different areas. So the first one is Girls Who Code. Girls Who Code is an organization that helps young girls, just like it says, Girls Who Code. It helps young girls learn about coding and helps them build projects, right? So in areas and communities where they don't have these services in their schools, like I did when I was growing up, and as a matter of fact, the high school I went to doesn't offer what it offered when I was a kid. So would need something like this in my community, like this one. And Black Girls Code is another one. My head is in the, I just realized. Black Girls Code is another program like that. You know, there's been some backlash on Twitter of people calling it a racist organization. But again, sometimes when a group is not the majority, it needs to have its own organization to move into the majority, right? Girl Develop It, that's put out by the Board of Education, and it's in various cities around the country. That's also another similar program that helps young girls get involved. So these are organizations that we can help fund, and you know, so that they can help girls become, if they decide not to become engineers and developers, they'll become better thinkers, right? They can have that right brain, left brain thing going. Pipeline Fellowship, that is an organization that helps more women become angel investors. And so what that means, because that's another place where the VCs in the tech community are mainly guys, right? So this is an organization that helps women, it gives them a boot camp and helps them learn more about angel investing. And then Women 2.0, it's killing me that I'm in this. Women 2.0 is an organization, they consider themselves a media company, because what they do is they provide education and services to technology startups. They also have hackathons. They have kind of a thing like, you know how TechCrunch has that thing called, not Crunchies. Crunchies is the awards. What's the other thing they do with startups? Yeah, like, so Women 2.0 does that kind of thing. 2.0 helps women who have started technology startups get off the ground, helps them learn how to pitch and present to VCs. And so all of these are opportunities that we can all get involved in, that we can tell other people about. We can follow these organizations on Twitter or Facebook and help spread the word about them so that we can bring more women to technology. Because I think it's really important. You know, I'm kind of sorry sometimes I gave up. I wonder where I'd be today. Would I have created the next Facebook, the next Twitter? Who knows? You know, I can't ever say. But there are girls out there waiting to do that, and who should do that. And thank you.